My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. There are passages in the Gospel that really surprise us, especially when they come directly from the lips of Jesus. But if they surprise us, they must have shocked the apostles even more when they heard him speak with that gentle and strong tone of voice. Now, one of these examples was when Jesus changed Simon Peter's name and called him the Rock. And that on this rock he would build his church. Plus, he would give him the keys to the kingdom. Now imagine the disciples looking at each other and say, What? What? Peter, a rock? I mean, they understood perfectly that Peter was anything but a rock. He was emotional. He had this mixture of human elements and yet also divine ones. He was high-strung. He was emotional. He had this tendency, to blurt out stuff. And he tended to anger. And even at one point cut off the high priest's servant ear when Jesus was threatened. And I think he was prone also to anxiety. But it was all, in the end, all combined with this divine call to be a rock. Humanly, he was not a rock. But with Jesus' call, he indeed became a rock. So we see that human tendency appear in today's gospel when Jesus speaks about the upcoming future. And Matthew says that Jesus was destined to go to Jerusalem and suffer grievously at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and scribes and be put to death and to be raised on the third day. Well, those are words of Matthew, but they're paraphrasing what Jesus said. Yet Jesus must have said this with a tone of severity, a kind of serious look in his eyes, a voice of seriousness that was there meant to prepare them. But Peter, supposedly the rock, he had just been anointed as the rock, well, he reacts for them all. And his reaction is absolutely not that of a rock. He was scared. He thinks that the Lord has overdone things, that he's become overzealous, that he needs to calm down and get some realism, right? So he says to him, and this is not a paraphrase, this is like a direct quote, "Heaven preserve you, Lord. This must not happen to you." But then Jesus turned to Peter, and again, a direct quote, "Get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle in my path because the way you think is not God's, but man's way of thinking." Now, that's pretty strong, but it's not the first time that Jesus has spoken directly to Satan. He told Satan to be gone when he was being tempted in the desert at the beginning of his ministry, because Satan was trying to stop him from eventually getting to the cross. And so Jesus sent Satan away. Same thing when that man was possessed by a demon, the man among the Gerasenes. There too, Jesus told him to be gone and sent him into that herd of swine. So, of course, the demons have no choice but to obey. So now, when the devil hears this about the cross, he kind of snuck into Peter's soul in some way, thinking that he could use Peter, who is the rock, to dissuade Jesus again from the cross. So when Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan," he's not really speaking directly to Peter. He's really speaking to the evil one, to Satan. I mean, he says, "Get behind me, Satan." Doesn't say, "Get behind me, Peter." So, humanly speaking, Peter was well-intentioned, but somehow his emotional state, his human vision, his lack of fortitude, all that had somehow weakened him. He was really afraid of the cross, this terrible instrument of torture. So he wanted to protect Jesus from what seemed to be like a failure of his ministry. And I'm sure the other apostles would have agreed with him. But Jesus was really saying that the cross was God's will, the plan of redemption for all mankind, And this was a pivotal moment. It was like a pivotal moment for everybody, and kind of like a moment of conversion. And Peter, well, he was flawed, he was impetuous, he was like a work in progress. And as you know, later on, he denied him 3 times. And we apply this to ourselves. Lord, I too have my weaknesses. I have my fragile moments. I too am a work in progress. But your mercy is always there with me. You care for me all the time. You know, like, think what the angel Gabriel said to our Blessed Mother. He said, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. The power of the Most High will overshadow you. It's really wonderful to consider that the power of the Most High is always overshadowing us at every moment. Whether we're going through hard times, through pain, or through moments of darkness, or if we are upbeat and everything seems to be running smoothly, the power of the Most High overshadows us. Not a dark shadow, but a protective shadow that keeps us cool on a hot and sweltering day. So when we apply this to our life, we know that in the end, nothing should trouble that intimate divine union that we can have with God. Neither sin, nor our shortcomings, nor the sad experience of being sometimes unable to conquer some defect in spite of everything we might do. Everything comes right eventually if we learn to turn confidently to God. I mean, after all, despite all his failings, Peter was still like he was that granite rock that Jesus made him out to be. But sometimes it can happen. Our lack of humility makes us see these insurmountable obstacles where they don't actually exist. And as a result, it can cause us to become discouraged and even careless. St. Josemaria spoke about this situation using an illustration that he saw from his childhood. It was in a meditation in which he referred to the giant-sized figures that one can see at these local or regional carnivals in Spain. These happen in Holy Week or in some traditional festival like St. James or national holidays. And he would see these large figures that would walk along these colorful floats, on Holy Week, and apparently they would be called ninos or something like that, like these puppets or large dolls, and they're shaped in traditional figures. And he would see these parades in his village as a child, and he describes it how there's these fireworks that are let off, the brass band leads the parade of the giants, the children are full of wonder and they scream, and the figures seem absolutely enormous. The giant, he says, sways along in time to the music, and it seems that if it were to fall, people would be crushed by this large giant. And everything seems very impressive. But when the celebrations are over, one sees that the giant is actually just, a wooden frame covered with cloth and just kind of maneuvered by a single person. He would have seen this at the end of the carnival. But the same occurs frequently when we look at our own defects. He concluded, when you see the giants within you, don't forget that it's just make-believe. From time to time, everyone has within a minor conflict which pride tries to magnify in order to give it importance. Don't pay the slightest attention to such trifles. Pride accumulates problems and blows them out of proportion. From a few bits of cardboard, it can make a giant, a wooden, just by a few wooden slats. There's just an ordinary mortal inside. Don't be taken in, he says. It's not worth it. And so what a great thing it is to be humble enough to recognize our own nothingness. That that we not give ourselves too much importance, that we not take ourselves too seriously, that it's not worthwhile getting upset about our defect or our defects, that God is with us, He overshadows us, and that's really all that matters. Though Peter was named the Rock, well, he was really sketchy at times, and I think he was humble enough to realize that. And even in his moments of triumph, he would drop to his knees and he would go to Jesus humbly and say, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." And that was an act of confidence that we too can imitate. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.